Hello, I'm Dave Feinlieb, and this is Beyond the Shelf. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. You can find out more about how we're helping leading brands and retailers build retail media and product detail page content faster than ever before at itsrapid.ai. My guests on today's show are Lauren Livak Gilbert and Nate Pinkston. Lauren is the executive director of the Digital Shelf Institute, also known as the DSI. Before that, she was manager of Digital Shelf North American Consumer at Johnson & Johnson. At J&J, Lauren was responsible for the overall North America digital shelf strategy for 42 plus retailers, including Amazon, Walmart, Target, Walgreens, CVS, and many more, and 33 plus brands across the US, Canada, and all acquired companies to support the overarching company e-commerce goal. Nate is the head of growth at Microsoft Retail Media, a division of Microsoft Advertising that helps retailers build retail media networks and helps brands access the retail media landscape in a scalable fashion. Nate has worked with many of the largest retail media networks in the world and helped thousands of brands launch across those networks. He also oversees Microsoft Retail Media's efforts around AI. Please enjoy my conversation with Lauren and Nate. Lauren and Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
You are, I believe, our second time guest.
Woohoo! I feel honored.
I feel like I need audio sound effects to go with that one. And Nate, a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Yeah, looking forward to it. Lauren is a lot of fun to co-partner, co-host things with, so I'm sure we'll have a good time today.
Lauren, our listeners, I am almost positive must know you. Nate, they should know you if they don't know you already. Tell us a little about you. How'd you get into the space?
Well, I've only been in like the retail media advertising space for actually almost 5 years now, but so that's a lifetime in these fast evolving media. So I come through a couple different places where I bounced around in politics and government, which is timely for this year. But then went to grad school, went into consulting for a little while, was at a smaller MarTech company, and then came here to Microsoft. The funny thing with that was I was told when I started, you were going to travel all the time. You were going to have to go see a client anytime there's an issue. We were like a really small team. And sure enough, the second day on the job, I was on a plane to a client. But the second week on the job, I was supposed to be at this conference that actually got made remote because there was this virus thing going around. And then the third week was everyone go work from home for 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, I didn't travel for 2 years. So I came into the retail media space right at the start of COVID, like literally at the start of COVID. And so it's been quite the ride over the last couple of years. And so I work with Microsoft's retail media business. We power a number of large retail media networks. We have a network of our own that allows advertisers to buy across the space. And we are probably not the best known or largest footprint of players, but many people have heard of our parent company, so it opens a couple doors.
I have a little Microsoft story myself, Nate, that I've got to share with you. I interned at Microsoft back when I was in high school, believe it or not, and got to meet Bill and Steve at the time, and many, many, many amazing people. I'm so impressed with what the company has done now and so excited to be talking with you. It always brings great memories back for me. So great to be talking with you today.
Yeah.
Lauren, I know everyone knows you, but will you tell us a little about your role in the DSI?
Sure, of course. So I lead the Digital Shelf Institute. So it's a community of digital leaders across the industry. We actually cover almost every industry from automotive, CPG, personal, healthcare, baby, alcohol, bev. And really it's about bringing digital leaders together in a community, and we create research and content. We also have a podcast, Unpacking the Digital Shelf. So for those who I don't know, hopefully one day we'll get to meet.
That's amazing. I hear you've had some good guests on that podcast.
I mean, maybe were you there?
I might have been. I did get to have that privilege, so I'm super excited about that. And it's a great. You have set the bar so high with that one. So yeah, it's a great, amazing podcast and community that you've built. So retail media. Let's get right to it. Nate, maybe I can start with you. You were mentioning that you power a lot of different networks and retailers, and give us kind of the lowdown. What do we need to know in the retail media space? So much to know.
I call it a reasonably immature medium and space. I think it's got a lot of evolving to do, and it's going to look a lot different. Well, probably a year from now, but at least 2 years from now, 5 years from now, it's definitely changing a lot. For folks who don't know, yet the best way to think about it is ways for retailers to help engage with shoppers through sponsored content, really allowing brands and advertisers to directly target and place ads on their site, and then leveraging the retailer's data and audiences out across the open internet to connect with those same shoppers as they're going about the rest of their web journeys. And is even now, I should say, extending into in-store placements and activations and all kinds of things across anyone's shopping journey. And so the big thing is really just, it's a new and evolving space. So I think there's a lot of change, a lot of different ways people approach it and how they define it. And so we're in an exciting place where we get to maybe shape some of what it's going to look like.
Lauren, you've been talking about this connection between the top of funnel and the bottom of funnel. Does the funnel still exist, or has it been compressed flattened out of existence?
In my opinion, it does not. I think it's a totally different way of looking at the consumer journey. And I reference the Google shopper journey that they've created. It kind of looks like a squiggle, and it's more about all the different areas that you can do discovery, or you can learn about a product and where you purchase and how you purchase. And it's a totally different version of the funnel. And I think organizations are starting to track to that, but the functions and the ways of working have been built around the traditional funnel. So it's going to take time to change that. But I think with the amount of touch points we have and the amount of ways that brands can discover products, it's no longer linear. Like, you just don't go to the store and pick up milk anymore, right? You add it to your Instacart list, or then you do click and collect from Costco, or, there's so many different ways that you could purchase. So in my opinion, it is adapting and no longer is linear.
I love it. And you've also talked about the importance of consistency between kind of a brand's retail media presence and what they're doing there, and the item page or the product detail page, depending on which retail you're working on. Will you tell us a little more about that, why that's so important these days?
Sure. Yeah. I think that the challenge with retail media is, to Nate's point, it's still new, even though it seems like it's been around for a really long time. It has, to an extent, but there's so many new retail media platforms. There's over 600 of them. And the retail media teams at a brand usually sit separately than the e-commerce and the digital shelf team. And so sometimes when someone in the digital shelf or e-commerce team hears about retail media, they say, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. Well, that's not the case. And this is a tagline that I have coined, and I say a lot if you listen to me, but if you spend $1 on a retail media ad that directs to an incomplete, inaccurate, not compelling PDP page, that's a wasted dollar. And that doesn't account for all the other ways that people could have found that product, or all of the other SKUs where you spent money on those ad dollars. So retail media and e-commerce are connected, and they need to be connected from an organizational standpoint, from a content standpoint. And we need to begin to bridge the gap between those two items that have existed separately for a really long time, but cannot, in order for brands to be successful. So really focusing on what that content strategy is and working with the retail media team to make sure when they're building out a campaign they're directing to PDPs that have a brand story and are really showing all of the content they need to.
We're going to be talking about this study that you both recently worked on. Before we do that, Nate, will you just kind of give us a Tech 101 on the tech stack, the pieces, on-site, off-site, this idea you're buying media here and there, everywhere. What goes into all that?
I will do my best. If you can't see our faces, Lauren and I both made like quite the grimace as we were asked this question, because the short answer is it can literally look totally different at every single retail media network. And that comes from a number of different things, but some retailers are building a custom tech stack in-house. I mean, I couldn't describe to you what all the components of Amazon's tech stack are because it's all built in-house and is a total black box that I have no insight into, really. But you start to look at other players, and typically, I'd say that the components of a retail media platform usually take some broad strokes. An on-site platform where what you're trying to do is sponsor your products and run display advertising that allows you to engage with someone who's already on the .com of that retailer. And so you're on retailer.com and you're thinking about buying certain products and you search for them. You get sponsored products in the search grid. You can go to a PDP page. Maybe the homepage has banners, top of the pages have banners, carousels. So that's the kind of ad inventory you're working with there. And then as you think about the offsite world, what you start to get into is a variety of things that are inclusive of a lot of what we think of in programmatic, but you're leveraging retailer data. So you might have retargeting, but you also might have retailer audiences where you're engaging with people on more of the open web. And those could be across almost any publisher site or even across search engines like Bing Shopping is the one I'll push for my Microsoft roots. But you're shopping across the internet, and you can be leveraging retailer audiences to target people that either have been to that retailer site or fit your target demographics. And so that's typically what we're seeing in offsite. And as things start to evolve, there's a lot more components that are coming in. So as I mentioned, retail media is somewhat immature. So does it include CTV? CTV was the hot thing for a while, but like as you start to mix the retailer data with your CTV targeting, it's like a blending of those two things. So it's really like it starts to be more amorphous the broader you go. There's in-store activations now that are inclusive of digital things like audio in store, digital displays. So a lot of it is really just about anywhere you're activating against the retailer data. And 6 months ago, I would have said with cookies leaving, that was going to be a really, really important thing that was going to change the landscape. Now, I don't think it's unimportant, but certainly has a different connotation. So a lot could be retail media today.
Lauren, from a brand perspective, when you talk to brands, if I'm a digital shelf expert, I need a crash course in retail media. What do I need to know in order to at least be somewhat savvy when it comes to retail media?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say, depending on where you sell on a retailer.com, whether it's an Amazon or a Walmart or a Target, understand where those ads appear, what they look like, and how they appear from a search perspective. Like how many of the top spots are sponsored versus not. What kind of banner ads are there? On Amazon, you have a brand store capability. Does that make sense for your brand? So really understanding at the places you are selling how ads show up and what type of ROI that can be for your business. And I always reference the IAB. So that's how Nate and I actually met. So I have to give them a lot of credit, but they have both an in-store and a digital shelf playbook around retail media. So just understanding all those different elements of ads so that when someone clicks on that, it's going to your PDP, but also how are you fitting it into your broader omni-channel strategy and how are you driving your consumer down the right shopper journey that you want them to take?
Awesome. We will turn it into a class for use in the materials after, and everyone will be able to get up to speed. On to this study. You always do the most amazing studies because you're really in touch, I feel, with the shoppers, with the brands, with the retailers. Give us kind of the headlines. What is the study, and what was kind of the genesis of it?
Well, thanks, Dave. I didn't pay you to say that, so I really appreciate the thoughts around our research. I do love doing these projects because it is really just talking to brands and talking to retailers. And I think this one was super interesting because we did talk to retailers and we talked to brands. And it's really all around joint business planning. And Nate and I were actually on a podcast when we were having this conversation, and we were trying to figure out how can we provide better collaboration between the brands and the retailers, and what is that key factor. And JBP is really a big part of that because it's a conversation that exists where brands and retailers are talking to each other and figuring out what's our strategy for next year. So why not have a better time to have a collaborative conversation? But what we discovered was there really isn't a roadmap or a framework or really a standard process around JBP. So we really wanted to interview both sides and say, hey, what does a template look like? What should you be focusing on? What's the timing of it? Who should be involved? And so we really kind of mapped out what we hope is a framework for the industry to really start to standardize these joint business planning conversations so they can be more productive for both sides. And there's less confusion around who's involved and what you should be talking about.
Nate, how would you think about kind of the study, and what kind of got you most excited in some of the results?
I mean, for me, it was really something where it was an opportunity to talk about how do we make things better across the industry, or what are some best practices that could allow people to actionably, change the way that they're operating to evolve not just retail media, which is where I focus most of my time, but even this process around digital and e-commerce and how they think about omni-channel with their marketing and all of it together that frankly can be improved and mature and go a little bit further than it does today. And so I really liked the idea of having a clear mechanism that already exists. I mean, almost everybody, most big brands, all retailers, they're doing some form of this already. And so it's really a question of, can you take the vehicles that already exist like a JBP and turn it into something that can work much better for everybody? Because I don't think there's a lot of people out there going, gosh, I really love the way our JBPs have been going for the last couple of years, and just need our counterparts to do more this way. So to me, it's how do we drive that better collaboration, take the whole industry forward? And this was an existing vehicle where we could get into it from both sides. And guess what? Both sides said they wanted it to be better. And frankly, one of the most surprising things we found is how much they want to know how other people were doing it. Because everybody felt like somebody else knew better. And that just opened our eyes to how much this is valuable and how much people would really love some guidance on how to do better.
It is a great insight, one, on the journey, and two, the value and weight placed on competitive intel. At my previous company, Content Analytics, as you know, doing content health scores, the number one thing was, how do we stack up? Where are we on the score? And the value and the power of that was something I didn't even fully appreciate till it had become an industry standard. So great insights there. Talk to us about the study. We don't want to let every secret of the study out of the bag, but maybe give us a few highlights, if you can, on some of the learnings that listeners can apply when it comes to the JBPs.
I think the one that we, both Nate and I think it can speak for both of us, are super focused on and want to be the driving force out of this is that you should not be having separate sales and marketing joint business plans. You should not be having a retail media JBP, a sales JBP, a marketing JBP, and not talking to each other. You have to have an omni-channel JBP. That is best in class. That needs to be the path that you're moving forward to, because if you're not, you're one, probably spending too much money, two, not getting enough from the collaboration with your retailer, and also three, providing a lot of confusion for brands and for retailers because the retailers don't know who they should be talking to. And then on the brand side, you're promising things or accounting for dollars that you shouldn't be because you're having separate conversations. So that is really the number one thing for me out of the report. If you are having separate conversations, stop right now. Bring everyone together, get in a room, figure out a timeline, figure out a process, identify which function owns which part of the joint business planning conversation, and then communicate that to the retailer and say, we are coming to you as a full business. Here's who's represented in the conversation. Here's what we want to talk about. And you just will have a more productive, collaborative, and effective joint business planning conversation. So that's a really big takeaway for me. But Nate, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think I'll just, David, say that the report's free and you're all welcome to go get it. And so we will give away secrets, but we also have templates and checklists to try and make it easier for you and fill in a lot of those gaps. I would just build on what Lauren's saying. And right now that information flow is hard. And I think that's a lot of where everybody's getting hung up. And so the biggest recommendations are align internally with all your stakeholders first. Get everybody on the same page. And not enough of that is happening, which makes it a harder conversation when you're going in with your counterparty, whether it's the retailer or brand, to try and have productive conversations around goals and KPIs when you may have someone in your organization who at the 11th hour says, but wait a second, what about this priority? Or, well, that's not going to hit our profitability goal. Or that doesn't push this new product launch that you weren't even accounting for 3 quarters from now. And so you need to get all of those stakeholders aligned at the front end for your own internal stuff and approach it as literally a joint planning process. They are a partner of yours. It shouldn't be adversarial. It shouldn't be one way. And go in there thinking we can collectively find goals that will align for everybody, which should be omni-channel goals, to Lauren's point. Like if they're not, they're probably not really serving your overall business. But both sides want to sell more stuff, whatever it is. You both want to sell more of it. So go in there and figure out how to do that better together. And if there's disagreements around priorities, sure, but then align on the KPIs and the overall goals that you can agree on and align on, because there are going to be some that you can work towards that should allow you to find that common ground, which would be a better way to come out of a joint planning process together.
So I was just in a conversation with a brand this morning. They were mentioning that they've got a retailer JBP coming up in a few weeks. What words of wisdom or guidance or strategies could we potentially share with them or other listeners? And I have 2 personas for you. One is I'm a digital shelf manager, or I'm managing retail media. Maybe I'm a year or 2, couple years into the space potentially, and I want to participate in kind of the JBP process. The other is I'm running the whole team. I've got a huge organization, and I'm kind of on point, top to top, with the retailer. Tell me about those 2 personas and kind of tips and tricks or rules for the road for each of those.
Well, I think anybody can be involved. So for your first persona, if whoever is that second persona that's leading everything isn't thinking about things the way we're talking about from a joint perspective and from a getting everyone aligned up front, send them our paper. Point to the things that we're talking about.
It's the perfect opportunity.
Make yourself look good. Share our paper around. But legitimately, share that there is ways that can be more effective if everybody's on the same page. So whatever slice of the puzzle that you own, make sure you're communicating those goals upwards so they're really clear. But suggest that cross-functionally, you should all be aligned internally and think of what other partners are maybe not being included. We talk a lot about how finance may be left out of the picture, but I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, someone in finance is going to care, again, how many sales are you driving? What does that revenue look like? So include them up front. Think of who those other parties are within your organization you can bring together as a group and be that leader to kind of pull together a coalition, a cross-functional group that can share, this is the best way we want to move forward together. So I think for that person, that first persona, you absolutely can get involved. And back to our original point about everybody wanting to know how they do it better, nobody has it figured out. So there's no reason you couldn't insert yourself and say, hey, there's a better way to do things. Let's do it like this. Let's evolve the process, within the inclusion of all of these people, including myself.
Yeah. And I would add, get your data and your insights ready to go now. Because one of the learnings from the report that I think was surprising to both of us was we always hear brands saying, hey, we want more data from our retailers. Well, the retailers were asking the brands for more data. They wanted more insights. They wanted more category knowledge. They wanted clearer understanding of the goals that the brand had. So if you're prepping for a JBP and you have time, get really, really clear on your goals, communicate that out to your broader cross-functional partners and make sure that they're aligned. And also get all of the insights you have about your category and about your consumer. So talk to your category management team, talk to your insights and analytics team. If you have a revenue growth management team, bring them in to understand what SKUs are performing on which retailers. So gather all of that into a nice package that you can then present in the joint business planning conversation. And to steal some amazing advice from the famous Todd Hasselfeld from Colgate-Palmolive, do some research on the people that you're meeting with. Take the human element of it and understand, who are they? What's their focus area? Where are they from? Like, get to know them a bit before you go into this conversation so that you can make a connection and build a relationship outside of just the joint business planning conversation.
My aspiration is to be able to be as good a human being and make as many intros in the world as Todd does.
I agree. He's a fantastic human being.
Incredible. So thanks for mentioning that.
Shout out Todd.
Shout out to Todd. Absolutely. And can never enough. I want to talk about the retailer side for a moment. Traditionally retailer, you've had the merchandising. Now you have retail media. We talk a little about, okay, I'm going to have this joint JBP approach. How does that work then on the retailer side where I do have merchandising? I have maybe a somewhat newer function in retail media.
Yeah, I mean, for retailers, they are really learning how to be in the media business. And so for them, it's starting to understand more of what it takes to be a good media partner. And so I think a lot of the ones we talk to certainly are open to saying, hey, we know there's stuff we don't know, or things that as a retailer we perhaps have not thought about before, thought about in the same way. And they want to understand part of why they're asking, what are other people doing? Because they want those best practices to understand what they should be doing. So I think they understand that they've got to act more as a media partner and are evolving in that direction. But you're right, you've got this legacy set of operating around selling just the physical products that the merchandising teams tend to have a lot of the authority and for good reason. But what we would say is, because you should be doing these joint plans, you should think about the way that the merchants are engaging and the goals they're driving as just part of what the retail media team is also feeding into, an overall umbrella set of goals. And those should be probably, separate things that you're looking at, driving towards different tactics. Like ideally, you're not just going to take trade dollars from the brand and drop those directly to margin. You're going to think about, how do we use those to drive overall sales together? Turns out retail media is a great way to do that. So let's think about collectively, can we serve both goals? We've got goals as an organization we want to drive. And I think for retailers, everybody wants to get more into the retail media game, because they see what Amazon's doing. I don't know that everybody's going to make $31 billion a year in advertising.
Yeah.
So I think the way that you can think about retail media as one strategic aspect of driving your business forward is a great tool. And it should feed the merchants' goals. It should not be at odds. These are not things where they're in a disservice to each other. But at the same time, you can't, I'll say the thing some people probably don't want, you can't bully people to do exactly what you want. You should think about, they've got goals too, and you can find ways to work together where you have a joint win-win, where retail media dollars can be in service both to your overall sales goals, and to the brand's goals. And you should consider the best ways long-term, especially as the environment becomes tighter on marketing dollars. I mean, nobody's looking ahead at the economy right now and saying, well, people are buying more stuff that they're willing to spend more for, and so we're going to just double our marketing budget for next year. Sure, no problem. That's just not the environment we're in. So think about how you can be a good partner now, because in tough times, you may find it's the good partners that end up with more of the lion's share of those flexible dollars going forward. So that would be my thought for the retailer.
And I think that's a great perspective too, Nate. And we did another piece of research with Russ Derringer from Stratably, and we were asking kind of how many channels are brands really prioritizing from a retail media perspective. It's 4 to 6. Because the retail media budgets, to your point, Nate, they're not increasing year over year. And you might only have 2, 3 people focused on retail media. So you don't have the opportunity to work with 600 retail media networks. But if you have joint business planning conversations with the retailers where maybe you want to test and learn, hey, retailer, share a really new innovative way of shopping. A brand will test it out. And brands share some insights about a category where you want to dive into that specific retailer. That's a huge opportunity. So I think leveraging these joint business plans in the right way for how you're spending your money and who you want to coordinate with, it's a really great lever to pull.
So many great insights. We're going to include the link to the study and all the info in the show notes. I have a couple of fun wrap-up questions for you, if you're up for that.
Absolutely.
Ready.
Now, Lauren, you get some new questions today because we've already asked you our usual lineup of questions. This is a fun one, which you helped me come up with. So I'm excited to hear what the answer is. What did you want to be when you were young and when you were thinking about growing up?
I wanted to be a ballerina because I actually danced from age 3 to age 26. So I danced for many, many years. I had a lot of opportunities to dance in New York and I absolutely loved it, but did not pursue it because, it's really tough on your body and doesn't pay well. So here we are.
What an inspiration, commitment to make it happen, though. It's incredible story.
You'll find me at weddings on the dance floor. That's how I get my dance back in.
We'll be on the lookout. Now, Nate, you get your choice of either of the following. So, what did you want to be when when you grew up, or which two people have inspired you the most in your professional career?
So I'll tell you what, I'll do one person because one person immediately came to mind and I struggled for a second. So
perfect.
So professional mentors and literally the person that probably changed my career the most, which may sound a little cliche, but it was my mom. But it was my mom who worked. I grew up in Silicon Valley. She was working in the tech industry. She was at a startup. She got laid off in 2000, 2001-ish. As many people did, dot-com bust, right? And when she started to look for jobs, she had a lot of trouble getting jobs against even people with far less experience than her. And ultimately, she was the person who led me to switch my career from the public sector to the private sector, getting out of politics and going into the private sector. And it was really her advice, guidance, and following her lead that led me back to grad school, to pivoting my career. She went to night school and got her MBA like 2002 to 2004. And so I kind of followed a similar path, and that's what brought me to New York and the East Coast. Got me into the private sector as a whole. So she was by far the most influential in my career, very specifically, beyond just, being my mother and stuff. But if I go way back to what I actually wanted to be, so I've always loved space. And like, I would have been an astronaut if there was still an opportunity. Like, I don't see myself paying $1 million a ticket here at any point. But as it does become more commercially available, I will be on a space flight at some point. Like, I would have totally been an astronaut. Like, I love reading about astronomy stuff and anything about like the universe and black holes and whatever it is. Like, I'm into it. So if I could have been an astronaut, I'm wearing glasses for those who can't see. The eyesight was never there to be a pilot, which would have been its own whole thing. But yeah.
I'm going to turn this into the whole podcast going forward. And then I'll ask the wrap-up questions about the business portion. So thank you for sharing those with me. Those are great.
Dave, can I give you just one of my favorite facts about both Nate and I?
Please.
Nate lives in New Jersey and I'm from New Jersey. And so I have a lot of Jersey pride. So we're both New Jerseyans. And that is the fun fact that kind of ties us together. I don't live in New Jersey anymore, but it will always have a close place in my heart. And we both didn't pump our own gas. So the best thing about New Jersey.
I got it. And so, and now I should ask you about going to the shore.
Yes!
So I at least sound like I at least somewhat know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
All right. Well, those are great, wonderful stories, great fun facts. And another quick one is your hobbies, or what do you like to do if you get time outside of course, spending time on work and with your families?
I wish I had a good answer for this, but like I was expressing to someone recently, I do not have a great one. Like I'd love to say it was like I really loved, like I do like wine. I like to cook, but those are not things like I invest like that much time into. So I would happily talk about them with anyone for a long period of time. But I'm not sure they'd qualify as a hobby. But I wish I had something creative that I did, and I really don't.
Yeah,
Space exploration in your future.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect.
With a rocket in my backyard.
And Lauren, you've got a kind of a fun 2020 story that I feel would be a fun note to wrap up on. Nate shared some stories about how he was planning to travel and now didn't, but I'm sure it's back on the road now. But you've got kind of a fun story from around that time as well. Would you share that with us?
Sure, yeah. So circa 2020, well, I guess 2019, I took a new job. I was living in New Jersey, and I moved to Boston on January 6th of 2020 for a new job, and I didn't know anyone in Boston. All my family and friends were in New Jersey, and I was super excited. I was like, yeah, I'm going to live in the city. This is going to be great. It's a totally new state, fresh city, fresh start. Super excited to make friends and socialize. And 2 months later, the whole world shut down. And I was in a very small apartment in the city and I did not know anyone. But I decided it would be a great time to online date. And I met my now husband in March 2020. So it was a beautiful full circle moment where at first I was like, okay, why did I do this? To now I met my husband and have a puppy and a beautiful life in the suburbs. So here we are.
You never know how the dots will connect, as the famous quote goes. And yeah, that's a great story. Well, great insights today, great topics to be able to get kind of from Retail Media 101 to insights on joint business planning. So covered a lot of really insightful ground. If our listeners want to find you online, reach you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, for me, I mean, feel free to always connect with me on LinkedIn, digitalshelfinstitute.org if you want to become a member. I know Dave's going to post the report, but if you just go to the resources section and type in JBP, you'll be able to find it.
Same thing. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty good about monitoring that. And if folks really want to get hold of me, my email is pretty easy. It's nate.pinkston@microsoft.com.
Wonderful. Well, Nate and Lauren, amazing. Two incredible guests. You made it a lot of fun for me as a host. I really enjoyed it. Learned a lot. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks for having us.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Sierra Nevada, Revlon, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.